Yeah, I welcome everyone to, yes, I welcome everyone to this webinar session today. Um, this is part of our program we do at EduAfrique. Today, we are a little bit focusing on Europe. You know, it's as if most of the things we do at EduAfrique is concentrated in the US. But then, I mean, we still have other opportunities that are there in other countries like UK and other European countries. So we will keep on, from now on, we will also be doing, although in the past we've done some webinar sessions for other countries. So we are concentrating today on Europe, particularly in UK. So we welcome everyone to this, and we hope that at the end of today's webinar session, you guys will go home with something new concerning other places apart from the US, Canada, and Australia, maybe those places we always hammer on. And well, even if you look at EduAfrique records, you find out that mostly 70% of our mentees uh, are in the US. So but then we will hope that we get people also in other. But recently, like you guys know, we have someone already in South Korea, and we also have people in Hong Kong and other. So we are looking forward to getting some of those people that have moved to those other places to bring on opportunities. Because what we are looking for is a place that our young people from Nigeria, from Ghana, from other African countries to see opportunities that are there in the Western world and grab them. Yes. And what we are here is to bring those opportunities to you guys. So without wasting any time, I would want to invite my co-founder, Ubina. He will be the moderator of this program. Um, I'll have to invite him to take over from here and tell us how today's event is going to be. Ubina, you have the floor now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stanley, for the introduction. And first of all, I want to thank God for a new year. So this is our first webinar for the year 2025, and
Yes.
this webinar is in line with our mission. Please, can you mute your microphone?
I'm meeting, don't worry, I've muted the person.
Okay. Yeah. So this webinar is in line with our mission to provide mentorship and guidance to young Africans who are interested in securing admission and funding to study abroad. And so far, our young nonprofit has assisted over 50 Africans to get into top institutions across the globe. Most recently, we were able to assist someone get admission and funding to Yale. And we also sincerely believe that after this webinar, we would have at least one person who successfully gets this scholarship. And our speaker today is Ozama Kandoka, who I respect so much as a person and as a scholar. I have known her since 2013 when I started my undergrad at the unique University of Port Harcourt. And since then, I have been in touch with her. I'm reaching out to her when I have advice, and she's always ready to give very sound and knowledgeable advice. And I believe that you guys are going to really benefit from listening to her today and also exchanging knowledge with her. So this webinar is going to have like so the first part is going to be me introducing the speaker formally, and after that, the speaker will present how to secure UK scholarships. After that, there will be a section for questions and answers. And I encourage you guys at that point to open your mic and interact with our speaker. You guys can learn a lot from her. And after that, Stanley is going to close the webinar with some kind of like a conclusion. Okay, so let me share my screen so I can formally introduce the speaker. I believe you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay,
And I
okay,
believe
yeah.
every person can see it.
Yes, yes. So this is the biography of our guest speaker today, Ozamaka Ndoka, who just recently got her doctorate sometime last year or 2 years ago. Ozamaka Ndoka is a regulatory economist with a Big Four firm in the UK. Her work is focused on regulatory frameworks, price controls, and cost benchmarking in the water and energy sectors. Specifically, she estimates cost functions to calibrate efficiency levels for companies in regulated sectors and secure favorable outcomes with the regulator. She holds a PhD in international economics from Aston University in the United Kingdom, a master's degree in econometrics from the University of Nottingham, also in the United Kingdom, and a bachelor's degree from the University of Port Harcourt in Nigeria. When not working, Ozamaka enjoys traveling, playing badminton, watching TV, and reading novels. So at this point, I am going to hand it over to Ozamaka to share some insights on how she secured her UK scholarships. She has won a lot of scholarships, and today she will be explaining to us how she got those scholarships. So this is first-hand knowledge that you guys are about to receive from one of the most intellectual persons I've ever met my whole life. Ozamaka, please, you can start.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. That was quite an introduction, but thanks, Stanley and thanks, Ovina, for organizing this. And thanks, everyone, for joining. Well, like they said, my name is Uzamaka, and I'll talk more about myself and about my experience as I go through my presentation. Don't know if I have permission to share this, my screen, but I know
Yeah,
sometimes with Zoom, it can be a bit tricky.
Yeah, yeah, go
Um,
on.
yeah, I made it open for everyone
okay,
for
that's good.
yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah,
I can see it from my end, so I
Okay,
believe every
that's
yeah.
good.
person can see it.
Okay, so I will just make this. Yeah. So because I'm sharing my screen, I can't really see anybody putting up their hands, but I think it would be good to any questions you have, if you don't want to maybe forget it during the course of the presentation, you can put it in the chat box or you can write it down and then we can go through it at the end of the presentation. But yes, I'll just take you through a step-by-step guide to securing UK scholarships. But again, this is a practical approach that is based on, my personal experience. And this is how it would go. So I would just have a brief section talk about like, an introduction to myself and what sorts of scholarships you can apply to. Most importantly is where do you start looking for scholarships and, how do you really prime yourself for success? And then we'll have the questions and answers later. So, introduction of myself. So, like they've mentioned, I did my undergraduate degrees in economics in University of Port Harcourt. And there I graduated with the first class. That was where I met Obina. And that program was funded by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And it was a case of timing, I guess. Sometimes you can't really plan for certain things, but this was just a case of timing. It was the 50th anniversary of the Central Bank of Nigeria, and as part of celebrating their 50 years of existence, we had a competition for secondary school students who were in SS3, an essay writing competition. And the winners from each geopolitical zones were awarded a scholarship for throughout their undergraduate degrees. But you had to study economics, which I already wanted to study. So that was how I got that scholarship. And one thing I would preface is getting that scholarship, obviously, I was already, academically inclined and getting good grades in secondary school, but one of the prerequisites for keeping the scholarship was sharing my progress with the central bank. So I would have to send them my results and send them updates. And that really kept me quite on track. And I think that also contributed a lot to me making the first class. But that primed me up for success because the first class also then created the room for me to be able to apply for my scholarship in the University of Nottingham when it came time for my master's. So my scholarship in the University of Nottingham was funded by the university itself, and it was called the Developing Solutions Scholarship. And that scholarship was open to citizens of Commonwealth countries. And so I applied for that, and then I got that. At the end of my master's degree, my supervisor at that time told me about a website where you could find, funded PhD programs. And so I looked through the website, and that was where I found my priced studentship that was funded by State University and Lloyds Bank. Lloyds Bank is a bank in the UK. And so it was funded by those two, and I was to do my PhD in international economics, and that was at Aston University. So that's just a brief overview of myself and my scholarships that I have won so far. And in terms of scholarships, there are different types. So I've just broken this down to a few categories, but there are quite a number of them that might not fit in where they are. But there are merit-based scholarships. So of the scholarships that I've won, all three of them, I would say were merit-based, but the first two, the one from the central bank and the one from Developing Solutions, were more merit-based. So merit-based scholarships tend to filter a lot based on academic excellence or academic performance. And so typically in these scholarships, you would find thresholds like, oh, you must not have graduated with less than a 2-1, or you must not have done this, or you must have participated in certain extracurricular activities. And then they take you through a process where you would need to prove that you deserve this scholarship. So it could be writing essays, it could be interviews, it could be a lot of things, but those are really how merit-based scholarships will work. Need-based are quite different, and I would say in the UK they're not as many, but it would be if you're from a underprivileged background, if you're from certain countries, then you would qualify for these scholarships, and it's typically focused on financial need. Merit-based doesn't really matter whether you can afford to pay the fees or not. You deserve it, you deserve it. Need-based, you have to prove that you need this scholarship. I don't know if we have people on the call that are looking towards like a PhD in the UK or if it's more masters. But for the PhD in the UK, especially, that is where you'd have the studentships and assistantships. I know in the US it works differently because they have lots of GA positions there, but in the UK that is mostly for the PhD students. So studentships work very differently, and I'll go into more detail about that later on. And then you have the government and external scholarships, like we know some of them, the popular ones like Chevening, Commonwealth. You have the NDDC one and all those fall into that. And there are some external ones, like let's say the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship. Those ones work with specific institutions. So it's not all institutions that they partner with. So they are quite niche in that aspect. And they usually work with really top schools. So in the UK, that would be Cambridge, Oxford, LSE, and that's where you'll find these niche external scholarships. And of course, I've spoken about the university funded scholarships, like the one that I got. And I think an important thing is, where do you start looking? For the UK, honestly, the best place to find information is the university website. The university would typically list out who they are funding, who they are partnering with, how much they have available, how many scholarships they have, and they'll show you where to get them and how to get them. So if I go back to my master's one for developing solutions, first of all, I was very particular that I was not going to apply to any university that is not funding or there is no scholarship. I was not going to do it. So already I had a list of universities that had funding. And how did I get this list? It was literally through a manual search of top universities, what funding do they have available, keep a list of that, and what funding do I qualify for. So they are quite organized in the sense that they will tell you who is eligible. Are you from Nigeria, Ghana? Are you from what country? This is what scholarships you have. They will tell you what you have to do. Some of them are automatic. Once you apply for the course that you're applying for, you're automatically considered for the scholarships. Some of them are not. Some of them you have to put in a different application for those. For developing solutions, I had to put in a different application. But the application I could only put in after I'd gotten admission with the university. So it wasn't happening at the same time. So again, it's something to keep in mind in terms of timing because they all have deadlines. I'll talk about that later. And then, of course, you have the, government and external organizations. I think the easiest way to find this is like aggregator sites, like the one I've put a link on. I can put that in the chat as well, or a Google search. Those ones are very heavily publicized. Some of them will be listed on the university website, on some universities' website, because not all universities are as detailed as others. But some of them will be listed there. Others you can find through a Google search. And this next one is actually quite particular to, I would say, to PhD students or to PhD applicants, and that is these departmental scholarships. So sometimes a department could have funding. They've not really close to the university, or the university has not put it up on its website, but that funding exists. And the only way you can know this is like reaching out to a member of faculty. Sometimes you'll be on the university website, sometimes you would not. So if you're applying for a PhD, for instance, after you speak to a potential supervisor, there is nothing wrong in asking them if there is any additional funding available, either from them or from the department or any projects that they can point you towards. And that way you can follow up with that with them personally. And then my PhD was a studentship. And I'll briefly explain the difference here. I don't know if it works differently in the US, but in the UK, there are two ways to apply for a PhD. You can either have a research proposal, so there is an area that you're really passionate about or an area you're really interested in that you want to do your PhD research in. So in that instance, you craft a research proposal, you put that together with your application statement of purpose, all that, and you put an application with the university that you're applying to. And then they come back to you, give you an admission, and you people can talk about funding afterwards. For the studentship, there is an existing research in place. Let's say a professor had won funding from an organization for a specific research, and they are just looking for a PhD student that will feed into that research. They don't need you to research anything else. They need you to research this topic. It's already crafted, everything is there. They just want you to be a good match for that. So there is this website called defindthephd.com, which is very detailed because it shows you so many areas and so many fields, and what funding is available, what sort of funding as well. Is it going to cover everything, including stipend? Is it only going to cover fees? It gives you a lot of detail. The difference here is your research proposal then has to fit what it is they have advertised. And when you go for the interview there, it feels more like a job interview because you're trying to show how well you fit into this existing project. Not about your ideas of what you want to research, but this is an existing research. How do I fit into it? And I got my scholarship this way. And my sister also has a PhD. And when she was looking, I told her, if you're not really particular about what you want to research, this is a good place to find a studentship. And she also found her studentship and her scholarship from there. So it's a very good resource. One thing I would say is if you're looking at this page, some of the scholarships would say open to only UK students. Don't let, or only home students. Don't let that deter you from applying. And why I say that is because the home students sometimes do not apply and the professor would lose that funding if they don't have a student. So in the end, sometimes they end up going with international students just because no home student applied. That was what happened in my sister's case. No other person, no home, it was a home student. It was a home student scholarship, but no home student applied, and she applied, and so they ended up giving her that scholarship. So don't let that put you off. You could also still just apply for that. The ESRC is a research council in the UK, and recently, following Brexit, they've now opened up their funding to international students. Before, it used to be only for home students, but now it's for everybody. And it's such a good opportunity as well, because what it does is it gives you funding for masters and it gives you a conditional 3-year funding for PhD if you want to do it. So it's very good. It links you a lot up with a huge body of researchers. It covers the fees, it covers the funding, and a lot of opportunities for you to meet other people. And they have a select list of universities they work with. So that's a very good opportunity if you can get it. Recently, there's been a rise in like social media. Again, maybe this might be for PhD applicants, but it's like professors coming on LinkedIn or on Twitter to say, oh, I have this opportunity, I have this, I have this funding. If you're interested, you can apply. And they put that out there first. And so sometimes it's good to keep to keep an eye on LinkedIn or on Twitter to see what's happening. And sometimes it could just be private individuals who want to contribute to society in that way, and they put that information up there as well. In the UK, there are some charities that support international students. They are harder to find, to be honest. And so I would say if you're looking for where to concentrate your efforts in, it has a lower chance of success, but it is still possible. So there are charities and philanthropists that support international students, and you could look at those as well. The one I want to talk on a bit is networking. Um, Networking is very important if you're looking for this is more relevant to PhD students. And why I say that is imagine you started your master's or you during your master's. In that time, you will come across a lot of people, be it faculty, your supervisor, you come across people. And sometimes the level of dedication you show or the level of commitment you show during your master's, that professor can be like, oh, this is a student that I want to work with for a PhD if they want to do it. And obviously, any funding they have, you have a first call on that funding. And so that's where networking really comes into play. One thing I would mention is for my studentship, for my PhD, my master's supervisor was the PhD supervisor of the lady who ended up becoming my PhD supervisor. So when I was getting letters of references, he wrote me a very strong recommendation letter. And she told me after my interview, she was like, oh, this man spoke really highly of you. And, that is kind of thing that we are looking for. So don't discount, like, what a good word someone can put in for you. Don't discount the importance of that. And last but not the least, honestly, this I think is if worst comes to worst is the crowdfunding or looking for somebody to sponsor you. Um, People have done it. Some people have been successful, some people haven't. But yeah, it's also an option. So I would say tips for success. Honestly, first of all, is just to start early. Um, I would say ideally 9 to 12 months before the actual start date of the program, because some scholarships close really early, like the deadline for application is much earlier than the deadline for applying to go to that university. So you have to start early to start looking at, okay, where do I want to go to school? What scholarships are available? When do I need to put in an application? Things like that. And I'll say stay organized. It's easy to, click, 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 find things. But if you're not documenting, it's hard. It's very easy for things to slip through the cracks. So for me, during when I was in my master's application, when I was in my PhD application, I had spreadsheets where I had a list of schools, I had links to the scholarships, I had the deadlines, I had what was required for all of them. And that way I was able to keep track, have who had applied to, who had rejected me outright, who had all of that. And that way you can see what's happening and you're able to keep track of what you're doing. And if you're in Nigeria, sometimes getting your documents in order can be a huge pain. I'm talking about getting your transcripts, getting your certificates, things like that. Sometimes there are delays from the university. So this is why you need to start early as well. You need to start, gathering your documents together. So it's not a case of, oh, you need the university send a transcript or something and you don't have it, and that's when you're just going to go and start that process. That's not the good way to go. So I would say if you need to write GMAT, if you need to write whatever you need to write, TOEFL, IELTS, just start early and start preparing for that. Um, and then yeah, nothing beats crafting a very strong application. So for UK schools, for both my scholarships, I had to have gotten admission to the university first before being considered for the scholarships. So obviously you need to put in a good application with the university. So this would be like your personal statements, your statement of purpose. If you need to do an interview for the admission, then you do that as well. But just strong recommendation letters. Like, this is a personal story, but I remember when I was applying for my master's, I had a recommendation letter from a lecturer in Uniport, and he wrote me this letter, and I read it, and I was like, see, even if I was me on the admission side, I don't think I would admit me based on this letter. It felt very, it didn't say anything about my academic strength or anything. Instead, he was talking about how I'm a humble person and this nobody cares about your humility.
I'm
But if
telling
you're
you.
trying to, it's not a necessary requirement, So those are things you have to get recommendation letters that actually state your strengths, that state why you are a good candidate for a university or anything. It should not bother on, your personality or things like that. Is very, very low ranking in what you need. And then I think the last thing is a numbers game. Like if you apply to just one scholarship, all your eggs are in one basket, spread them as much as possible. Apply to as many as possible that you are qualified for. For my master's one, honestly, I think I applied to maybe 10 or 12. I applied to quite a lot. And then I ended up getting two. One was 50%, one was 100%. So I ended up taking the 100% one. For my PhD one as well, I think I applied to about six or seven. But PhD, I was a bit more picky, I think, because obviously it's a 4-year program and I wanted something that would cover me for the 4 years. Sometimes you will see some scholarships. I'll be like, oh, okay, we can only, give you funding for 3 years, which is fine if you can figure out what to do in the last year. But I didn't want to go into a situation where I'm wondering what's going to happen if my funding runs out and all of that. So I was a bit more picky with the PhD one. But yeah, so it's a numbers game. Just apply to as many as you can. But yeah, that brings me to the end of the presentation. I will stop sharing the screen and I am happy to take questions at this point.
Yeah, thank you so much, Osamaka, for that wonderful and insightful presentation. Um, I know many of you have questions, so you can go ahead and open your microphone and ask your question just to have like a deeper understanding of what she just went through.
Can look at yeah, okay. Someone is raising his hands.
Okay, please, Choice, you can
Charles.
open your microphone and ask your question, please.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, good
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah, thank you so much for the insightful presentation. I quickly went to the website of the University of Nottingham. I checked
Yeah.
out the Development Solutions Scholarship, and I found out that if you have a degree from outside of your country, home country, you are not eligible. Because I have a master's degree from the US, and I'm thinking of doing another master's or PhD at the University of Nottingham. For my undergraduate, I finished with a distinction, and for the master's, I had 91% average.
Yeah.
So, what advice do you have for me? Because
Was
I'm not
your un
eligible.
was your
I did
undergraduate in Nigeria or in the US as well?
Nigeria.
Okay. Yeah, so I think for that one, for the application, you can focus on your undergraduate degree because honestly, that's what they need. Since you're trying to do a second master's. So you can focus on your undergraduate degree, and in that way, you're not disqualified because if you're using your master's degree, that's from the US and you might be disqualified. So that might be one way to go around it. The second way, actually, sometimes I've found that it doesn't hurt to ask questions, and it could be a case of you emailing because I think there should be a contact there for their scholarship, the department that handles the scholarships, and you could email them actually to ask them if you can still apply, given that your undergraduate was in Nigeria, but you're coming to do a second master's, and so you're not doing a PhD and you're using your undergraduate degree.
All right. Thank you very much for that advice. I'll consider that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Choice. And I think this person, Choice, is a very proactive person. He's already going to look at the resources that have been provided and also asking very intelligent questions. So before I give room for the next question, I want to talk about the issue that Osamaka raised. That is the issue of letter of recommendations. And I think that's very important. And this is because the way Nigerian lecturers or professors write letters of recommendations may not be the way that American professors write theirs, or maybe what they would expect. Okay, so one thing I would suggest is you could look for samples online and give to your professors so that they can understand the kind of qualities the admission committees are looking for in a recommendation letter. kind of like to make you a very competitive applicant. Believe you me, those letters may be more important than even some of your scores. So it is very important that your professors or your lecturers submit the strongest letters for you.
Yeah, I think
So
I will answer a question from the chat. I think this was from Stanley.
okay.
If UK universities admit students into PhD directly with a bachelor's degree as is done in the US. I have a few colleagues who came directly from undergraduate, but they were not international students. And I am yet to meet an international student that's done a PhD in the UK. I mean, I've not met anyone that has come directly from master's to, sorry, from undergraduate to a PhD. So I know it's possible because I've met someone or two people who were like, but they were British people and they've done their undergraduate in the same university and then they've just, gone to the PhD. So I know it's possible, but what I don't know is if it's also possible for international students. I'm not sure. But then again, is something an email could answer. Like send an email to the admissions department, ask them if this is possible. Sometimes they say it explicitly, like you can apply if you have a strong bachelor's degree, with like a heavy research component, you can apply. Sometimes it's also said that minimum requirement is a master's degree. So I think it varies on what language they use in their admissions page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that question is very important because mostly our mentees are mostly bachelor's degree holders, and most of them have actually gotten direct PhD to the
Yeah.
United States. So, well, it's just like you said, it's something that someone could have to research further to know whether it's possible, as in the case
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
US.
hmm
Uh,
And then I also wanted to note that so typically most of our mentees aspire to go to school in the US. So I'm
yeah.
thinking that could explain the lower turnout we have today. Typically our webinars, we have more than 50, 60 people.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
US is the so-called land of opportunity.
Yeah,
So
that
Yeah,
is
everybody wants to take
all,
advantage
all,
of the opportunities in
all,
the US.
all eyes on US. Assuming this thing is
Yeah.
US something now, you will see
Yeah, we
everybody.
typically have more than 50, 60 people,
yeah.
and they are always very eager to ask questions and all of that. But I mean, today's turnout is also very encouraging. We want to also send top talents to the UK to help them to develop better.
Yeah. Uh,
So,
I think there's another question about
yeah.
masters in prosthetics and orthotics. Um, think so. I have come across this area before, and it was a thing of chance. But it's one of those areas that is recently that universities are starting to offer a standalone master's course in. So typically it has been like woven with some other medical degrees. And so it's never really been a standalone area. But now they are starting to like, make it a standalone area. And because of how new it is, like this person has rightfully mentioned, there's not a lot of schools that offer the course to begin with. And not a lot of the external fundings would apply to that course just because of how new it is. So it might be one of those ones where you would need to reach out to faculty to see if anybody has funding within themselves. Or it would be one of the government scholarships that do not really care what course you're going to study. They just know what universities they want you to do it at. So that might be what to go to with that one. But yeah, I know it's a very new area that finding a standalone master's degree might be a bit more limited than others.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer, Uzi. So I want to encourage everyone, if you want to ask a question, I would prefer you raise up your hand and then open your microphone and speak. I think that would be better. But if you cannot speak, you can also put your questions in the chat. So there is a question from Chukwu Nonso. I don't know if you want to open your mic or you want me to read your question. Okay, I can just read. Okay, yeah, go on, please.
Good evening, okay. Although it's just still the same as what I wrote there. I've been having these
Yeah.
conflicts whenever I want to apply for any scholarship because of the numerous gaps I've had throughout my undergraduate days. Because after my undergraduate studies, I had up to 3 years gap outside of what I did in school. So then when I want to apply, it keeps on degrading my strengths. I don't know how best I will apply to schools when what I read in school is no longer what I've been practicing for those for those 3 years. So what I'm asking is, how can I justify my strengths when applying to school? For instance, I read civil engineering. Then after a while, I kind of digressed, started learning coding and software engineering. So I've digressed for so long. Now, when I want to apply again, I want to apply in terms of civil engineering again. So how can I justify those gaps and turn them into strengths in applying? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a very good question. So I think one thing to keep in mind is that there is no right candidate. Like there is no paper perfect model candidate. Different organizations, scholarship sometimes can be a bit subjective. And how you can use your, the gaps that you had. To me, you've not had a gap. What you've had is a transition. A gap is like a period where you're just, nobody knows what you're doing. You're just nowhere to be found. Like, what are you doing? But you've had a transition.
You're in
And
the limbo.
you're in limbo, exactly. And that ability to transition alone is a strength because it's not everybody that can pivot from what it is they are used to something else. So already that makes you stand out because it shows that you're someone who is dynamic and you're someone who can learn new concepts like from scratch. If you're self-taught, another strength because you actually did it by yourself. Another thing you can do if you had any either extracurricular activities that you did or any volunteering, mentoring you did, those are also strengths because then that shows like more of your, leadership role or you being able to participate in like community building projects. Those are also strengths. So I think for you, if you're looking at it, obviously you have to say that you're great, or you were great in your undergraduate at your academics and stuff like that. But then outside of that, you have these skills that has enabled you to transition into a different field where you excel at, and that in that time you have involved yourself in certain passion projects that have led to community development and all that. That's how you would package that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing I would say is there's something I always say that no knowledge is a waste. You talked about engineering, coding. I think these things are related, to be honest with you. Coding is something that is multidimensional. Most fields apply some level of coding and programming. So I think what you talked about makes you a stronger candidate, just depending on how you present your story. So it's all about just packaging, as we say in Nigeria. If you package it well, you can sell it to anyone. Okay, so that's what I'll
Oh,
add to Ozamaka's brilliant answer. So I wanted to ask Ozamaka some questions, pending other questions from our audience. So I wanted to ask Ozamaka, is there any major difference between studentship and assistantship? So for us in the US, we are more familiar with assistantships, which waives tuition and then pays stipend. So I don't know, how is this different or similar to studentship?
So in the UK, an assistantship would come with an obligatory teaching element. You have to teach certain courses or teach undergraduates and that is tied to your scholarship. A studentship doesn't come with any of those strings. Like you're just there as a PhD student researching this topic, and you're not obligated to teach as a condition of your scholarship. So I think that's what
Mhm.
really makes them very clear. And again, with the assistantship, sometimes the home office, when you're applying for your visa, they would not give you a student visa. They would rather give you a working visa because they feel the obligations of your scholarships makes you more of an employee and less of a student. So because of that, which works out better for you to be honest, because then you start your visa, your time starts counting towards your permanent residency quite early. So that's the
Mm.
major difference. There's this obligation that you have to, teach for the university. You're almost like a staff, but then you're doing your PhD at the same time. Why for the studentship, you don't have that obligation to do so.
Okay, so
Okay,
so
okay.
so one would say it's just like in the US we have three types of assistantship. We have graduate teaching assistant, we have graduate research assistant, and then we have graduate administrative assistant. That is GTA, GRA, and then GAA. So one would say that the graduate teaching assistant is tied to the assistantship in the
Yeah.
UK, while graduate research assistant and graduate administrative assistant could be tied to the studentship.
Studentship. Yeah. Yeah. You could say that. Depending on your student. So for me, my studentship, because it was a collaboration between the university, between Aston University and Lloyds Bank, I was obligated to do research that was interesting to Lloyds Bank. So he had to focus on like UK businesses, he had to focus on productivity, profitability, things like that. And we had a research center that was funded by Lloyds Bank. So obviously, if we had conferences or seminars that we are hosting, I had to play part in that seminar and those conferences in like, arranging for the conferences, presenting at the conferences, just logistics of the conferences. But that was so I think you call that admin really in that aspect of it. But then the research part was, quite key because it had to be important to Lloyds Bank. And we had to have meetings with them to update them on progress and things like that.
So, which means
Okay.
your scholarship was studentship.
It was a studentship, yeah. And I think if
Okay.
you're translating it to the US equivalent, probably a research assistant, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That sounds good.
Okay. Yeah,
And
thank
just
you.
like I wanted to mention the other guy that asked question about, I think there is a lot of connection in this coding thing and even in civil engineering. So there are a lot of things. There are lots of things you can. I think even in that area we have something of about AutoCAD, and so I would advise Chukunonso, in addition to all that things that they have said, to kind of do other um, certification program or other skills acquisition program, like in that civil engineering. They have something about AutoCAD. You can learn how to design using some of these modern equipment. Even some of these AI tools can teach you how to do some of those things. People do a lot of things now with some of these graphics and all that. So you can do something further on that and use it to align yourself into whatever you want to study in the civil engineering.
Yeah. And I think just as to piggyback off of that I think coding skills are very transferable. Like you said, it can
Yeah,
apply across fields. So I think that even makes you a stronger candidate, to be honest. Like it makes you a stronger candidate because you can transfer those skills across sectors. And that's a very, very important thing to
yeah.
have at this time.
Yeah. So I wanted to also ask another question for the benefit of our audience. So I was just thinking, Uzi, if you could tell us what are the potential challenges and opportunities that come with going to school in the UK? For example, um, in the US, we typically take 3 courses each semester to be full time. So what would be the equivalent for the UK? And after school, how many, let's say, years do you get to work before you probably become a permanent resident? So I want you to just tell us
Yeah.
everything about being a student in the US and the potential opportunities.
Okay. To be honest, a lot has changed in the time that I've been here. So I first got to the UK in 2016. It was a different world, to be honest. It was so different. In that time, we had in my class, for instance, we were about maybe 80 students or something like that. And of the 80 students, we had 5 Black people, 2 Nigerians, 1 Ghanaian, 2 people from St. Lucia. Honestly, till today, I've never met anyone else from St. Lucia. It's such a small country that you don't really see people from there. So it was a different demography. And as time has gone on now, the more there's huge emigration wave from Nigeria, the more the demography is changing. So you have more Nigerian students or more Ghanaian students just being in the UK. And so my master's world and my PhD world, or towards the end of my PhD world, they are quite different. When I was doing my master's, for instance, it was so easy to get a part-time job as a student. Like it wasn't even rocket science. Like you want a customer service job, you get it. It was that easy to get it. But now I know it's a lot more difficult to do. And it's just a supply and demand thing. And so I think it's best to base my answer off of what is happening now. Because again, I can't speak for master students because PhD students are a bit different in the UK. So even before the laws were changed, PhD students always got 3 years after they finished their PhD to stay in the country and work and things like that. Now that the laws have changed, I think they still get 3 years or 4. I think 3. I would say 3 years they get after that. The good thing is that towards when you're finishing your PhD, there is a clear, if you want to stay in academia, if you want to stay and lecture and stuff, you have so many options. Because one, your supervisors will most likely want to keep you in the department because you guys have so many ongoing research that they really don't want you to move anywhere. So there's a very high probability that you would get a job in the university if that is the path that you want to follow. Where it becomes a bit more tricky is if you want to switch out of the university. If you want to go to the industry, for instance, that's where it becomes a bit more tricky. So I'll say in terms of challenges, as an international student, honestly, I think money is a big factor because yes, your PhD might be funded and you might get a stipend. So the stipend you get, so for me, I was getting, I think, £1,400 a month, and it's tax free if you're a student. So you're not paying tax on that. So I was getting £1,400 a month. Now, depending on what city you live in, that could be enough money or that could be too little money. If you're living in London, that's not enough money because it won't even cover rent. So that's not enough money. If you're living in, places with lower cost of living, then you have more money to spend. I think I would mention is sometimes there are opportunities that exist in the university that you might not even be aware of until you speak to somebody. So in the second year of my PhD, I found out about it's called what was it called? A resident tutor program. And what the
So, sorry, Uzi, can you unmute yourself? I think.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what was the last thing you heard.
Okay, you said you have. I think it ended in where you were talking about residents.
Yeah. So there is this opportunity that most universities in the UK offer, and it's called the resident tutor program. And what it is that one day of the week, you're on duty. And the duty is really if a student is in crisis or anything like that, you go with security and go and speak to them. What you get in return is free accommodation. And found out about that in the second year of my PhD. I didn't know about it throughout the first year. And so from the second year of my PhD till I finished, I didn't pay rent. And I was living in a very nice apartment. And that saved me a lot of money. And that's like one thing that I know made my journey really different from other funded PhD students because we didn't have that cost of rent. But again, it's information. If you don't know, you would never apply anyway. So money is always a thing. Time is also another thing because PhD is very intense. Like, it's like, you're researching all the time. So sometimes it's hard to find a balance between school, work, if you're married, family, friends, things like that. So there's that challenge as well. When you finish the PhD, if you want to go into the industry, my advice would be start early. I started applying to jobs, I think 18 months before I was going to finish my PhD, just because I knew that getting a job outside academia when you've never worked in outside academia is hard. For some people, it'll be different. Maybe from Nigeria, you already had a lot of experience, working in the industry and you already have that. For me, I knew I didn't have the experience. So I just knew it was just going to be harder if I didn't want to stay in academia. So I just started early, knowing that I don't have time again to be applying is not going to
Yeah.
be a full-time job for me because I had a PhD to finish. So it was a thing of I'll send out a few applications over the weekend, things like that. So it took time, but it was time that I had already budgeted for. And in the end, I was able to get a job in the industry that I wanted to get a job in. And getting a sponsored job, well, for those in the UK, If you can either do two things. If you finish your PhD, you have the post-study visa. You don't need anyone to sponsor you. So you can work wherever you want to work. But then for PhD, 3 years after that, you have to make another plan. So getting a sponsored job might be best because then you know that, okay, this company is sponsoring you for so time. So I know people that have done both. They've had their post-study work visa and they've just, worked in a different place and then tried to get sponsorship afterwards. Majority of my friends have done what I've done, which is like get a sponsored job immediately after the PhD and, continue with that. So that's what I've done. I finished my PhD 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? I think I finished, no, 3 years ago actually. And in that time, I've worked with a company 3 years. I've just switched jobs. So I've started a new job. And yeah, so I think it can be challenging, but to be honest, if you plan early so that you're not just caught in a time where everything is happening at once. Oh, you're finishing your PhD, you don't know what's happening, this is not happening. So just start planning really early. Send out so many applications. After you get so with the UK, remember when I said about the assistantship and graduate and studentship? Why an assistantship might be better for you is that from the PhD, your 5 years starts counting because you're on the work visa. So when you finish PhD,
Okay.
maybe you have just one more year and you get your residence permit. If you're on a student visa, you're on a 10-year route. So it's 10 years until you get your residence permit. But if you switch visas in that time, then you can now be on the 5-year route. So for me now, obviously I'm on the 5-year route, which would be quicker than if I was on the 10-year route. So that would be like in next year I should be eligible for the permanent residency, and then 12 months after that you can get the passport.
Okay, thank you so much for that explanation, Uzamaka. So Sandra, your hand is raised. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, I want to ask a question.
Please
So,
go ahead.
okay. So thank you. Thank you, Susamaka, for the wonderful presentation. So my question is, like I've been applying for scholarships. So although I got admission, but I was not opportune to get the scholarship finally. Then I also applied for schools in the US, and at that particular time, they said they don't want students. So now I started my master's in Nigeria at UNN. So although I just started the master last year, September. So we are still, we just started our coursework this January because that time was like Christmas period. People were not really serious attending schools. So I'm recently doing my coursework. I've not started my research. So I don't know. I want to like ask, when is it like when will I have higher chances of getting funding and admission? Like if I want to start applying to schools now, I want to apply for PhD. I don't want to apply for masters again. So I want to apply for PhD since I'm doing my masters, and I want like an advice on the time I can apply, and I will have a high chance of getting sponsorships or professors maybe wanting students to do research with them so that I will be at a higher chance of getting admission. So thank you. And then when will also be okay for me because the coursework are so stressful, like normal Nigerian school. And then like when it will also tally with my time because I'm working and I'm also doing masters so that I'll be able to like run everything together and get admission. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sandra. I think just a follow-up question, just so I understand. How long is your master's program for?
It's for 18 months, almost 2 years.
Yeah, okay. So I would say if you're planning to apply for a PhD in the UK, one very important aspect they look out for is research experience. So they want to see like how well have you done in research, either be it your BSc or your MSc. And so your dissertation in Nigeria, I think in your project and in your master's dissertation, score component is very important. So I would say you can apply from whenever, if you're going to apply for a PhD, if you're using your master's, whenever you start getting results, like I don't know how they do it in Nigeria now, if you get results in the middle or if it's at the end, I'm not sure how it works. But if it's in the middle, which is perfect, then that means you can start using those results as they are. It's not your final results, but they are your scores as they are coming. You can start using those to apply. So in terms of timing for you, I think it depends on two things. It depends on one, do you get your results as you go along, or is it something that waits to the end? Two, your undergraduate project, what was your score in it? Was it really strong? Is it what you're still doing now in your master's? And I think the third thing probably is what area would you want to do your PhD in? Do you know exactly what you want to research in, or you're just open to doing a research in something that is related to your field? But I think if you're looking to do a PhD and you're going to use your master's, then you need some sort of results from that master's. Either be it ongoing results, or if you're waiting till the end of it.
Okay. Yeah, I want to do my PhD on what I'm doing in my master's. Like I'm doing veterinary public health, and I also want to continue that in my master's. So that's it.
And what of the exam results? Do you know how they are released? Are they released at the end, or do you get like something in the middle?
Yeah, I know it's at the end, but I don't know. You can get maybe your statement.
Yeah,
Like you
if you can get a
lecturer.
result statement sometime in the middle, you can actually use that to apply. Because when I was putting in my PhD applications, I had not finished my master's from University of Nottingham, but I had a statement of, results that what I've done so far, and I was able to use that to apply.
Okay, but at least I must start my research work, right? Before I can
Not the
apply.
research. The research work, they might give you a conditional admission based on what happens in the outcome of your research, but I didn't have my dissertation results then. I didn't. So what I had was just all the courses I've done so far in the master's program, like my scores and things like that, and what I am planning or what I had done in my dissertation and waiting for the results for.
So, so in addition to that, okay, Sandra, have you finished?
No, I still have question, but not
Okay,
this particular
continue.
one.
Okay,
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 another
okay. Before you go to the next question, I wanted to also add or ask some of the questions that can also come from the audience, and it is about publication. Are they strict about publication, or are they only they are just liberal based on just maybe your undergraduate project and or your master's thesis?
They're not strict about publication, but if you have them, it's a good thing.
Okay.
But they're not strict about it. I didn't have any publications when I was applying.
Oh,
So they're not
sounds good.
strict about it. Yeah. And all my friends that got scholarships that I started with at the same time, none of them had publications.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, another question I don't know. I'm usually confused about the weather of uh abroad, like this winter, fall, and spring, and then when student normally get admission between these times. I also like an explanation based on it.
Yeah. In the UK, typically the admission is in fall or autumn, which is like September-ish. Some universities for admission in January, but if I'm being completely honest with you, those universities typically are, for lack of a better word, are not as high ranking as other universities. And so they will have less funding available, if any. And because the January students are out of sync with other people, because almost every other person starts in September, and then you have these people starting in January, they're out of sync with everybody else. Recruiters, like companies that have graduate schemes, are planning with the September people. And here you are in January. And so there is a mismatch, and they end up waiting to now join the next. I find it's really not the best to do the January thing, to be honest. If you get funding and you can do it, perfect. But there is a lot of mismatch because other majority of the schools are in September starts, by July you're ending. So by the next September, you're supposed to be starting your graduate program if you get a job. And then you're in January, you're going to end the next January. So you're going to wait until, the next September. So there's that mismatch there. But yeah, most schools do start September.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for the questions and the answers too. So there is a question in the chat that I want to read right now. So this question is from Ebenezer Okudo. So this person says, greetings, Ma. My environment is quite nice. Okay. I am applying for a master's program in a field different from my undergraduate studies. I am worried about the application requirement. I don't know what is it. Okay,
Yeah, I
as
think
my undergraduate
yeah.
project and current research under review for publication are in an unrelated field, I am concerned that this might impact my application. What do you think?
Okay, she's trying to, or he, I don't know,
So for some reason,
Ebenezer.
I cannot see the entire message.
Yeah, I
No,
can read
Can you
it.
see it?
I
Yeah.
can
Okay.
see it. I can see it. I think the question is borders on whether the publication, he or she, I don't know, Ebenezer, whether he's a man or a woman, I don't know. But the person is trying to get to know whether the publication that is published in another field uh, has, is there a mismatch? Can that actually affect something like that? I think
Okay.
that's where
Okay.
he or she is coming from.
Yeah, that's what I understood from that as well.
Okay.
And I would say my answer is no. Research experience is research experience. Like you you have the research skills. There are core research skills that you need to carry out any, research exercise. And you have a publication that is under review, which is even an additional step. To get, your publication accepted under review is a big step. So I would say don't let that put you off. Don't think that, oh, I should not apply because all my research experience is in, textile design and I'm trying to apply in, developmental psychology and education. No, you still have the research experience. All you have to do is highlight what research skills you have, be it like, how to source for data, analyze data, write up, things like that. And that's what you need, really. It doesn't matter that it is in a different field. You have the research skills, you have the research skills. It's about how you present it.
Yeah. And then talking about research too, I just wanted to add to what Osamaka just said. There are many platforms online that you can gain some research skills, such as Coursera. Coursera is very good, and I believe they have some courses on research methods. I believe that also counts as research experience. You can also talk with your advisors in school. Maybe some of them are into publications. They can include you as an assistant, and your name would be among the writers of the article when it is published. So I believe all of this will also enhance your research experience and improve your chances of getting into some of these schools. Okay, someone has a question. Please, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Okay, my doctors and good evening, everybody. Good evening, Ma. My name is Chukwuebuka. Yeah. First and foremost, I want to appreciate and thank you for this presentation because people like me, we have been so pessimistic about coming to the UK. One night has always been, if not US, we don't go anywhere. Because all this one I've been thinking in my wild imaginations that UK doesn't give full funding. That has always been my perspective. And then the life after school, has not been, I have not had a kind of clear picture because of the nature of things I think people are doing that place. But nevertheless, I've given, I think, a better picture of it. So I want to appreciate you for it. Now, I think my question is, are there some sacred cows when it comes to courses in the UK? Just like, let me use the US for example. there are some sacred sectors when it comes to academics, in the sense that people like us in the social science, we tend to be so, I don't know how to quantify it now, but there's always a demarcation between people that did science and people that did social science. Is it attainable in the UK? Then life after, I wanted to ask also life after studies, which you have given some tips concerning. So are there demarcations when it comes to, like me now, I'm operating in the finance field. Finance is not the main, finance in terms of academics and also in terms of career. Are there some kind of sharp demarcations or there's always a level playing ground? Thank you very much. I don't know whether my question is clear.
Okay, so his question borders on the how US prioritize STEM
STEM, yeah.
over non-STEM.
Yeah, I got that. So I would say the US is very STEM heavy. You don't necessarily have the same in the UK. And why that is if you look at the UK economy generally, is a services economy. 80% of the GDP last year was contributed by services. So services is a huge part of the economy, and there is not as much, clear distinction between STEM and others. In terms of like the schools, for instance, some schools, how the UK schools operate is some schools are more research heavy than others. Some are teaching heavy, some are research heavy. They are not STEM and non-STEM. So that's the clear difference. So the schools that are considered really top schools are more research heavy. And the schools that are considered not as top schools are more teaching heavy. So that is the demarcation there. In terms of life after as well, honestly, you're more likely to probably get a job in the UK that is in the finance sector, just because they have such a very strong services and finance culture here. Um, all my friends are in the social sciences. Well, everybody I did my PhD in social sciences. It makes sense that everybody I did PhD in the social sciences. And all of them have been able to get like top jobs. If you want to work in the civil service, you can do that. Again, there's not a very strong emphasis on STEM as it is in the US. It's just not there in the UK.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
That sounds good. There's another question there, Obinna. Can you read it out? I think there is
Yeah,
another question. Okay.
yeah, there is a question here in the chat. So this person is talking about application fees for the University of Nottingham. He said he cannot afford it, and he's wondering if there is any opportunity for application fee waiver in the UK, because some schools in the US do offer that if you meet some criteria. So he's
Yeah.
asking if there is something like that for the UK.
Yeah, some schools in the UK offer it as well. You just have to write to them to explain what your circumstances is and why you cannot afford that application fee. To be fair, in the UK, very few schools have application fees. It's not as is it in the US. In the US, I know it's almost like a thing that almost all schools have
Yeah,
application
yeah,
fees.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But in the UK, it's not like that. Very few schools have them. And so it's not a huge source of funding for the schools. So it's something they are more likely willing to waive if you explain why you can't afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we
Try your luck.
recognize, okay. Yeah, we recognize that this can be an issue, application fees. For example, most schools in the US normally have application fees of more than $70, which is a lot if you look at it from the point of view of someone paying with Naira. And this
Yeah.
is one of
And
the
if you're
issues
applying
we
to more
try
than
to,
one
yeah.
school.
Yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
a lot. I know during my own time, when I was applying for masters 2017, 2018, I budgeted only $50. So I was looking for schools that would charge me like $20. Okay, it was a lot. But these are some of the issues we try to address in our nonprofit by providing resources to help young Africans who may not have the financial means to still access quality education. And in the past, we have been able to help a lot of students. Like currently, we are still trying to solicit for funds so we can help qualified students to kind of like apply to schools abroad. So what we
Yeah.
can say is contact your school and try to explore any funding opportunities they may have for that.
Yeah, and I think just writing an email or a letter clearly stating your circumstances and how you can't afford that application fee. And just always end it with, is there something they can do for you? Do they have any suggestions of how you can go about this? Like, don't put it like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. No. Always
Yeah.
end the email with, can't do this, but I'm reaching out to you in hopes that there's a way we can work around this. Do you have any suggestions? Do you have any, and that way they are forced to respond with something. It's like even
Yeah.
if they're writing
Yeah.
to say we don't have any suggestions, but they're forced to respond.
They'll have a polite way of telling you that they
Yeah,
cannot do it.
yeah.
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 And in
So,
addition to
okay, go on.
yeah, in addition to that, just like she said, as you try to sell yourself a little bit, tell them some of your qualities because no one would want to give you a free money, even if you don't eventually get admitted. But then at least sell yourself, say some of your qualities, the qualities you have, the research experiences you have. I mean, some of the things you are supposed to say in your SOP can actually be said on the email, to say not to write a book or something and start saying a lot of things about it, just a kind of tip about that. Then when they look at it, and you can actually also upload your CV in that request. Because I'm saying out of my own personal experience, some of the application fee waiver that I've gotten when I was applying for admissions, I had to do some of those things and then even attached my CV. And I tell you, one of the experiences I had, one of the schools, when I sent it, they had a polite way of telling me that they don't have application fee waiver. So I just left them and then I was focused on other schools. And then it was like a day. It was supposed to be like 31st was supposed to be the deadline. Then on 30th morning, or I think 30th when I got a mail from them that they have considered me for application fee if I can now go ahead and because I finished the application already, just for me to pay the money. I don't have the money to pay. So I was begging them and then they were telling me that they cannot afford it. And then the next thing they now told me that they now sent me a code that I should go there and put it and submit. I will be able to submit. And then I was able to submit the application. So in that regard, just try to kind of sell yourself and see what can come out of that.
Yeah. And also one thing I would add is if you have gotten any kind of like financial assistance in the past, you can also attach that document as an
Yeah,
evidence that you have
yeah,
financial need. So that I believe would increase your chances of getting other um, financial benefits.
yeah.
So
Even at Edu Afrique, I think we even apply that because the last time we awarded about 5 persons application fee waiver. We received about 20 something applications, but we were able to accept only 5 persons. Why? Because we saw a lot of qualities in those 5 persons because they submitted their statement of purpose and their CVs. We read it and we said, even when I was reading it, was the our selection committee read it and recommended about 8 persons or so. But then out of the 8 persons, I said, because we're looking at only 5 persons. So even when I was reading it, I said, if I were to be in admission committee of this, if I don't give these people admission, it means that I've actually done partial. In fact, I'm partial. So and luckily, I'm happy that one of them has even secured a full funded scholarship already. I think he reached out to me last week or last 2 weeks that he has gotten a admission and a scholarship, PhD. So we are happy that these things are working out the way we planned them.
yeah, and for sure we would like to sponsor more than five.
Yeah,
The challenge is financial constraints. Okay, if we have more money, we would definitely sponsor everyone who apply, but some of the assistance we offer so far are from our personal contributions. And we are trying to access more funding through donations, through grants, so we can help qualify students to apply to any school they want to apply. I don't want someone else to budget $50 for application fees. I mean that
like
that
you
is
did.
very tough, like I did. So I want you guys to budget like $500 at least for application fees.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other question? Okay. So since there is no other question, okay, I just saw something in the chat. So this person has an HND and currently doing PGD in dental therapy. And he said he has also learned data analysis. Now I want to do masters in public health. Can my PGD stand for BSc? Okay, this person is just saying that he has an HND and is present also doing a PGD right now. So he wants to know if these qualifications can qualify him to apply for a master's in public health in the UK.
Yeah, I think it's a hurdle, Linda. Um, this is a tricky one. And why is a tricky one is I think it would vary from school to school. From
Mm,
some
mm.
schools would, probably take a holistic approach to it and be like, okay, you have this, maybe this. Some schools would probably be more strict. Depending on again how they structured their masters in public health, they need you to have had, be with BSc something medical in your or do they need you to be qualified? Some of them need qualified doctors, like people that actually studied medicine or nursing or something in their undergrad. So I think this one will be one of those ones where if you see a school you like that offers the course, they have funding or not, just send them an email and say, describe what your background is, what your HND was, what your PGD is in, and this is the experience you have in the health sector and things like that, and you're looking to apply for this course that, should you apply? Because what you wouldn't want is, to put in the time and put in an application and they say you didn't meet the requirements.
The
So
ability.
I think this one honestly is one that just send an email to the admissions committee with, explaining really what your circumstances are and ask them for this particular course, can I apply?
Yeah, yeah. So for sure, I agree with Osamaka. This would definitely depend on the school's policies. So it will vary by school. And based on my own experience, I know some Nigerians who got into master's programs in the United States using their HND. So what they typically do is they combine their OND and their HND into one certificate and then into one document, sorry, and then submit to the school. Some of them also go through WES. There is something we call WES evaluation. So WES will evaluate the 2 degrees as a bachelor's degree. And then they have used that to successfully get into master's programs in the US. So you have to check for those schools in the UK to know if they accept those kind of degrees. And I would say don't feel discouraged. You could be the first one to open more doors for other Nigerians and other people from Africa to start using their HND to get into master's programs. It just takes one person to do it and the door opens for other persons. So any other question before we close? Okay, I think this is a good place for us to stop. It has been a very interesting and educative webinar, and I want to thank in a very special way our guest speaker, Dr. Ozamaka Ndoka. In fact, I will even go ahead to say, comma, PhD, because she deserves it, for spending some quality time to educate all of us on how to secure UK scholarships. And I know that, I know for sure that our audience really appreciate your time and the effort you put into preparing your slides and also spending more than 1 hour here with us to educate all of us on all of this. And we pray that God will continue to bless you, continue to also nourish you with wisdom and knowledge so that you will keep on impacting other lives. Um, Stanley, I think you should take over so that we can close.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Binla, and then thank you in a special way, Uzamaka, alias
Yeah.
Uzi. Yeah, it was it was a very insightful session we had today with you, and we hope to have you again in some other webinar
Capacity.
sessions. Yeah, we're gonna have so because we at Edu Africa right now, we want to be having something every month, to enrich our people, either on webinar session, on scholarship, or on job, or on internship, or even, in fact, we just, and even applying for some other uh, 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 scholarships, or even applying for permanent residency because recently, or rather it's there, but a lot of people do not know that they can even apply for permanent residency in another country while they are in their home country. So these are things that we intend to be doing from time to time. So we hope that we will still have you in future to come speak more on. There is something I recently learned about global, what do they call it in UK? Is it global visa or something
So
like
is it
that? So
global talent?
yes, global talent visa or something like that.
Yeah.
So we hope to have something with you on that in future. Maybe
Yeah.
sometime in summer we can have
Yeah.
you again to come and speak on that.
I think
Uh,
for that one, like I know a couple of people who have gone through that process and who were
yeah.
successful. So it's something that I could speak to them about if they want to share their experience because it's something that they
Okay.
have done firsthand. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's something we will want to have you again, and even other opportunities that are left for our people over there in the UK, because we most times we are more focused on US, Canada, and all that. We don't know that there are some of those small things that are there which we are actually ignoring. So thank you so much for your insightful discussion this morning, and also thank you, Ebina, for having coordinated this very well. We are looking forward, probably by March, we come up with something, or maybe another program on Asia. We might be moving to Asia in
Yeah,
March,
next
and then
month. Yeah.
yeah, and in April so we already have our work plan already in place. Looking forward to have people that can speak from those areas. So thank you, and also thank you in a special way our participants, because uh, if someone opens a business and no one comes to patronize, automatically you're gonna shut down. So if we are here to assist and no one is actually coming to accept the assistance, then there is nothing we are here for. Even though because like I always say in Edu Africa, your participation, all those your questions, all those your disturbances is actually what is making us to still remain in the market, because um, we appreciate them. We appreciate them very much, and we use some of those things you guys send to us to kind of make uh, make things known to a lot of other people. So thank you for your active participation. And as you get your scholarships, it motivates us. Most times when people come to share their success story, it gives us this motivation to do more. But when we're not seeing success in what we are doing, then we kind of get demoralized. Are these people actually doing what we're asking them to do? Or are they just, you know? So we are happy that as we do some of these webinar sessions, we eventually see the results. I remember when we did the one we did in, I think, summer 2023, that gave rise to about 22 or 23 persons coming to US in the August. So, we always do something and we see the effect. We always do something and we see the effect. So thank you guys for your active participation, and we keep on doing our best on our own part. We do a lot of things at the background. If you people don't know, we are doing a lot at this moment. We spend a lot of time trying to source for fund. I mean, we have submitted some applications asking for grants, asking for help. We have done our own parts. The rest are in God's hands. So thank you guys. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think someone was asked. I would share the slides with we can share the slides with Obina. I guess you can publicize it. And
Okay.
Ineti has my
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile and email, so I can share that.
Yeah. I was gonna ask also that we need the PowerPoint slide, because normally we want to share it for those who are not able to make it live to this program.
Yeah.
Because even this video, even this recording is going to be made possible. I mean, uploaded in our YouTube channel. So people who are not here can actually watch it from anywhere they are in the world. Yeah. So thank you,
And
everyone.
then I
Right.
don't know,
Thank you.
is there anyone here who is not a member, who is not on our group chat? The person can indicate so we can send the link to them to apply. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Ozamaka. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Have a
Bye.
nice day and have a good weekend and
You too.
enjoy yourself.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah. Bye,
So
everyone.
Stanley, there is someone who is not in the group. Please, can we get there are a lot of them who are not in the group. Can we get the link and share with them so they can join?
Pascal, are you there? Can you get it and share it immediately on the, because if I end this
No,
meeting, they may not be able
don't
to.
end it. Don't end it for now, please, so that we can forward this to
Let
them.
me check if I can go to my WhatsApp from here. I'm on my laptop and I didn't
I
join with my phone.
copying the link from my end. I think
Sorry?
it's only I think it's only an admin that can copy the link. I'm not seeing it from my end.
The link, are you sure? The link
Okay,
to
do
the
you know
what's
what? I can just share it with them. Don't worry.
okay, are you able to share it with me now?
Yeah, I can share it. Let me.
Boss, any sitting allowance?
Sitting allowance. Even me self, I dey even find sitting allowances.
Wait, let
because
me share this. Yeah.
because uh, things are getting out of hand. You know,
It's not easy.
it's not easy. I'm telling you, it's not easy anywhere.
The comment of Trump is the beginning of
In the
diversification.
beginning of somebody, I was watching one television. Somebody said the the coming of is the beginning
Yeah,
of
guys,
wisdom.
I just shared it. So Stanley can stop recording.
Yeah,
Yeah, so those who indicated interest, I just shared. You have to go and fill out some information. Then our team is going to approve you guys to join the WhatsApp group. So on that WhatsApp group, we constantly share information regarding scholarship and other information that relates to traveling abroad to go to school. We also talk about mock interviews and all things like that. So it's a good group to join, and I hope you guys apply.
all right. Have a nice weekend, everyone, and enjoy yourselves. We look forward to having you guys again on a live session again, probably in March, by God's grace.